Think like a philosopher. The 7 life-changing philosophies you need to know. Here are 7 life-changing philosophical ideas that can have a profound impact on the way we understand the world and live our lives. Stoicism, a guide to resilience and virtue. Core idea: focus on what you can control, accept what you cannot, and cultivate virtue through reason and wisdom. Key figures: Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and philosopher, author of Meditations. Epictetus, former slave and Stoic philosopher, emphasized practical ethics. Seneca, Roman statesman, playwright, and Stoic thinker, known for his letters and essays. Core tenets of Stoicism: dichotomy of control, what you can control, your own thoughts, actions, and attitudes. What you cannot control, external events, the actions of others, and outcomes. Philosophical insight: by focusing only on what you can control, you avoid unnecessary suffering. Instead of getting frustrated by external forces, you can direct your energy toward improving your own character. Virtue as the highest good. Virtue. For Stoics, virtue is the only true good, and living in accordance with nature means living virtuously. The 4 cardinal virtues are wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Philosophical insight: material wealth, fame, or pleasure are indifferent and not inherently good or bad. What truly matters is how you respond to situations with moral excellence and virtue. Emotional resilience. Managing emotions. Stoics teach that negative emotions such as anger, fear, and sadness arise from irrational judgments. By aligning your mind with reason and focusing on what you can control, you can develop emotional resilience. Philosophical insight: instead of repressing emotions, Stoics advocate for understanding their source and cultivating an inner tranquility by maintaining perspective. Amor fati, love of fate. Acceptance of fate. Stoics encourage embracing whatever happens as part of the natural order of the universe. This doesn't mean passivity, but rather an active acceptance of life's ups and downs. Philosophical insight: by loving your fate, you can turn obstacles into opportunities for growth and self-improvement. Memento mori, remember death. Mindfulness of mortality. Reflecting on the impermanence of life reminds you to live fully in the present and prioritize what truly matters. Philosophical insight: contemplating death isn't morbid but serves as a powerful motivator to live with intention and integrity. It encourages gratitude and humility. Practical application of Stoicism. Daily reflection. Like Marcus Aurelius, you can engage in daily reflection through journaling. This practice allows you to examine your actions and thoughts, identify areas for improvement, and reinforce Stoic principles in your life. Negative visualization. Imagine worst-case scenarios to mentally prepare for challenges and reduce the impact of fear or disappointment when things don't go as planned. Mindful detachment. Cultivate detachment from external outcomes and focus on your effort and intention, allowing you to remain calm and focused even in the face of adversity. Practicing virtue. In every situation, ask yourself, what is the virtuous thing to do? This helps you align your actions with wisdom, justice, courage, and self-control. Famous Stoic quotes. Marcus Aurelius: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Epictetus: it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Seneca: we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Stoicism's impact. Stoicism has influenced countless individuals, from ancient philosophers to modern leaders and thinkers. Its emphasis on resilience, self-control, and ethical living makes it a timeless philosophy for navigating the challenges of life. In today's fast-paced and unpredictable world, Stoicism offers practical wisdom for cultivating inner peace, personal growth, and a sense of purpose. By embracing Stoic principles, you can develop the mental clarity and emotional strength needed to face life's difficulties with grace and wisdom. Existentialism. The philosophy of freedom, choice, and authenticity. Core idea. Life has no inherent meaning. It is up to each individual to create their own purpose through their choices and actions. Key figures. Jean-Paul Sartre, French philosopher, novelist, and playwright, emphasized existential freedom and responsibility. Simone de Beauvoir, French existentialist philosopher and feminist, known for her work on ethics, freedom, and gender. Albert Camus, French Algerian philosopher and writer, developed the concept of the absurd and explored the tension between life's meaninglessness and the human desire for meaning. Core tenets of existentialism. Existence precedes essence. What it means. Existentialists argue that humans are not born with a predefined essence or purpose. Instead, we create our essence through the choices we make. This stands in contrast to essentialist philosophies that suggest a fixed human nature. Philosophical insight. You are responsible for defining who you are through your actions. Life is a canvas, and you are the artist shaping your own identity and purpose. Radical freedom and responsibility. What it means. With the absence of predetermined meaning, individuals are radically free to make choices. However, this freedom also comes with immense responsibility. There is no one else to blame for your choices, only you. Philosophical insight. Freedom can be both exhilarating and terrifying. Sartre described this as condemned to be free, meaning that while we have the freedom to choose, we also bear the weight of our choices. Authenticity. What it means. Authenticity involves living in accordance with your own values and beliefs, rather than conforming to societal expectations or external pressures. To live authentically is to acknowledge your freedom and to act in alignment with your true self. Philosophical insight. Many existentialists argue that much of society lives in bad faith, denying their freedom by pretending that external forces, rather than their own choices, control their lives. Authenticity requires confronting this reality and taking responsibility for one's existence. The absurd. What it means. Albert Camus introduced the idea of the absurd, the conflict between humanity's search for meaning and the indifferent, meaningless universe. The absurd arises from the recognition that life has no inherent purpose, yet we continue to seek meaning. Philosophical insight. Camus argued that instead of succumbing to despair or nihilism, we should embrace the absurd and live with defiance, creating meaning despite the lack of objective purpose. His famous metaphor of the myth of Sisyphus represents this idea. Sisyphus, condemned to roll a boulder up a hill for eternity, finds joy and purpose in the struggle itself. The anxiety of choice, angst. What it means. The freedom to choose comes with a sense of existential anxiety or angst. This anxiety arises from the awareness that our choices define us, and that with each choice, we are creating our own existence. Philosophical insight. Rather than avoiding this anxiety, existentialists encourage embracing it as a sign of true freedom. It is a natural part of the human condition when one fully realizes their freedom and responsibility. The other and alienation. What it means. Sartre explored the concept of the other, referring to the way we perceive ourselves through the eyes of others. This leads to a sense of alienation or estrangement as we become aware that we are objects in the eyes of others. Philosophical insight. While this awareness can be uncomfortable, it is also a key aspect of self-consciousness and interpersonal relationships. Recognizing the other challenges us to confront our own freedom and the freedom of those around us. Practical application of existentialism. Create your own meaning. Since life has no predetermined purpose, you have the freedom to create your own meaning. This could be through relationships, creative endeavors, career goals, or personal development. The key is to choose what matters to you and to live authentically. Embrace responsibility. Recognize that you are responsible for your actions and the person you become. Avoid falling into bad faith by blaming external circumstances or other people for your situation. Live authentically. Identify and live in accordance with your true values and desires. Resist the temptation to conform to societal pressures that do not align with your authentic self. Face the absurd. Acknowledge that life may be inherently meaningless, but find joy and purpose in the act of living itself. Embrace the freedom to create your own path, even if the universe remains indifferent. Famous existentialist quotes. Jean-Paul Sartre, man is condemned to be free, because once thrown into the world, he is responsible for everything he does. Simone de Beauvoir, one is not born, but rather becomes a woman. Albert Camus. The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. Existentialism's impact. Existentialism challenges individuals to confront the realities of freedom, choice, and the lack of inherent meaning in life. It empowers people to take responsibility for their existence, to create their own values, and to live authentically. In a world where external structures and meanings often seem shaky, existentialism offers a philosophy of resilience, freedom, and personal empowerment. By embracing existentialism, you can gain the courage to face life's uncertainties, make meaningful choices, and live in alignment with your true self. Utilitarianism, the philosophy of the greatest good. Core idea. The morally right action is the one that maximizes overall happiness or well-being for the greatest number of people. Key figures. Jeremy Bentham, 1748 to 1832, English philosopher and social reformer, considered the founder of modern utilitarianism. He introduced the principle of utility, which evaluates actions based on their ability to produce pleasure or prevent pain. John Stuart Mill, 1806 to 1873, English philosopher and economist, expanded on Bentham's ideas. Mill introduced qualitative distinctions in pleasure and emphasized individual rights within the utilitarian framework. Core tenets of utilitarianism. The principle of utility. What it means. The principle of utility suggests that actions should be evaluated based on their consequences, specifically whether they increase or decrease overall happiness. The goal is to maximize pleasure and minimize pain for the greatest number of people. Philosophical insight. Utilitarianism is a consequentialist philosophy, meaning that the morality of an action depends on its outcomes, not the intentions behind it. The focus is on the results of actions and their impact on overall well-being. Hedonistic calculus. Bentham. What it means. Bentham developed a method called the hedonistic calculus to quantify happiness and pain. This involves considering factors like intensity, duration, certainty, and proximity of pleasure or pain that an action will produce. Philosophical insight. By calculating the potential benefits and harms of various actions, individuals and policymakers can make more rational decisions aimed at maximizing collective happiness. Bentham viewed all pleasures as equal in value, whether physical or intellectual. Higher and lower pleasures. Mill. What it means. John Stuart Mill expanded on Bentham's ideas by distinguishing between higher, intellectual and moral, pleasures and lower, bodily, pleasures. Mill argued that intellectual pleasures are superior to physical ones, as they contribute to human flourishing and development. Philosophical insight. According to Mill, the quality of pleasures should be taken into account, not just their quantity. For example, the pleasure derived from reading a good book or engaging in meaningful conversation is of a higher quality than mere physical indulgence. The greatest happiness principle. What it means. The greatest happiness principle holds that actions are right if they tend to promote happiness and wrong if they produce the opposite. This principle is often summarized as the greatest good for the greatest number. Philosophical insight. Utilitarianism requires an impartial consideration of everyone's happiness, not just one's own. The well-being of all individuals affected by an action must be considered equally when making moral decisions. Individual rights and liberty. Mill. What it means. While utilitarianism focuses on the collective good, Mill emphasized that individual rights and liberties should not be sacrificed in the pursuit of utility. He argued that society should only interfere with individual liberty to prevent harm to others, a concept known as the harm principle. Philosophical insight. Mill's version of utilitarianism balances the collective good with respect for individual freedom. Personal autonomy and liberty are essential for maximizing long-term happiness and social progress. Rule versus act utilitarianism. Act utilitarianism evaluates the morality of each individual action based on whether it maximizes happiness in that specific situation. Rule utilitarianism suggests that we should follow general rules that, if universally adopted, would lead to the greatest happiness in the long run. These rules help guide behavior in situations where calculating outcomes might be complex or uncertain. Philosophical insight. Rule utilitarianism addresses some criticisms of act utilitarianism by providing a more stable framework for decision-making, while still focusing on the maximization of overall well-being. Practical application of utilitarianism. Ethical decision-making. Utilitarianism can guide your decisions by asking, Will this action maximize happiness and minimize harm for the most people? This framework can be applied in personal choices, business ethics, and public policy. Balancing interests. When faced with conflicting interests, utilitarianism encourages you to consider the impact of your decisions on all affected parties and aim for the outcome that produces the greatest net benefit. Policy and law. Governments and organizations often use utilitarian principles when making policies, such as in healthcare, allocating resources for the greatest benefit, or environmental protection, weighing costs and benefits for the greatest long-term good. Famous utilitarian quotes. Jeremy Bentham. It is the greatest good to the greatest number of people which is the measure of right and wrong. John Stuart Mill. The only purpose for which power can be rightfully exercised over any member of a civilized community against his will is to prevent harm to others. Utilitarianism's impact. Utilitarianism has had a profound influence on ethics, politics, economics, and law. Its emphasis on outcomes and the collective good has shaped public policy debates on issues ranging from healthcare to animal rights, from climate change to criminal justice. The utilitarian approach has also influenced business ethics, encouraging companies to consider the broader impact of their actions on society. Critics of utilitarianism argue that it can sometimes justify morally questionable actions if they lead to a perceived greater good. However, its proponents emphasize that utilitarianism provides a flexible and rational framework for making ethical decisions in complex situations. By adopting a utilitarian perspective, you can approach ethical dilemmas with a focus on the broader consequences of your actions, striving to create positive outcomes for as many people as possible while balancing individual rights and freedoms. Nihilism, the philosophy of meaninglessness. Core idea. Nihilism is the belief that life is without objective meaning, purpose, or intrinsic value. It challenges the idea that there is any inherent order or significance in the universe. Key figures. Friedrich Nietzsche, 1844 to 1900, German philosopher who explored the consequences of the death of God and the ensuing existential crisis. Nietzsche viewed nihilism as both a danger and an opportunity for personal and cultural transformation. Albert Camus, 1913 to 1960, French-Algerian philosopher and writer, often associated with existentialism and absurdism. Camus explored nihilism as a response to the absurdity of life and advocated for rebellion against it through creating personal meaning. Core tenets of nihilism. Rejection of objective meaning. What it means. Nihilism asserts that there is no inherent meaning, purpose, or value in the universe. Traditional sources of meaning, such as religion, morality, or metaphysical systems, are seen as human constructs with no foundation in reality. Philosophical insight. Nihilism forces a confrontation with the fact that life's meaning is not predetermined or universally given. This can lead to a sense of liberation or despair, depending on how one responds to this realization. The death of God, Nietzsche. What it means. Nietzsche famously declared, "God is dead," meaning that belief in a transcendent moral authority, like God, had collapsed in modern society, particularly in the wake of the Enlightenment and scientific progress. This led to a crisis of values and meaning. Philosophical insight. With the collapse of traditional religious and moral structures, humanity must confront the void left behind. Nietzsche saw this as a profound challenge, but also an opportunity to create new values and reimagine existence in the absence of divine authority. Active and passive nihilism. Nietzsche. Active nihilism embraces the void of meaning as an opportunity for personal freedom and the creation of new values. Nietzsche saw this as a positive, life-affirming response to nihilism. Passive nihilism resigns oneself to meaninglessness, leading to apathy, despair, and inaction. Nietzsche criticized this as a destructive response to the loss of traditional values. Philosophical insight. Nietzsche advocated for an active response to nihilism, urging individuals to transcend the emptiness by becoming Übermensch, Overman, or Superman, an idealized individual who creates their own values and lives authentically in the face of meaninglessness. The absurd, Camus. What it means. Camus explored the idea of the absurd, the conflict between the human desire for meaning and the indifferent, meaningless universe. He viewed life as inherently absurd because it lacks a clear purpose, yet humans continue to seek meaning. Philosophical insight. Camus argued that, while life may be absurd, we should not succumb to nihilism. Instead, we should embrace the absurdity and find meaning through our actions, relationships, and creative endeavors. The struggle itself becomes a source of meaning, even if the universe remains indifferent. Rebellion against nihilism. Camus. What it means. Camus believed that the proper response to nihilism is rebellion, not in the sense of violent revolt, but in the sense of defying the absurdity of life by creating personal meaning. He famously illustrated this idea in his essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, where he suggests that we must imagine Sisyphus, condemned to roll a boulder up a hill for eternity, as happy, finding purpose in the struggle itself. Philosophical insight. Instead of surrendering to nihilism, Camus encourages us to live with defiance, finding joy and meaning in our actions, even in the face of life's inherent meaninglessness. Existential crisis. What it means. Nihilism often leads to an existential crisis, a state of deep anxiety or despair that arises when one realizes the lack of inherent meaning or purpose in life. This crisis forces individuals to confront the void and question their existence. Philosophical insight. An existential crisis, while unsettling, can also be a turning point for personal growth. It pushes individuals to question assumptions, explore new ways of living, and ultimately create their own values and purpose. Practical application of nihilism. Confront the void. Rather than avoiding the discomfort of meaninglessness, embrace it. Acknowledge that life may not have a predetermined purpose, and use this realization as a foundation for creating your own meaning. Create personal values. In the absence of objective meaning, you have the freedom to define your own values and goals. Nietzsche and Camus both emphasize the importance of personal empowerment and living authentically, even in a meaningless world. Embrace the struggle. Like Sisyphus, find purpose in the struggle itself. Life's challenges and hardships can be meaningful if approached with the right mindset. Instead of seeking ultimate answers, focus on the journey and the experiences along the way. Rebel against despair. Instead of succumbing to apathy or despair, rebel against nihilism by living fully and embracing creativity, relationships, and acts of kindness. Even in a world without inherent meaning, these pursuits can provide personal fulfillment. Famous nihilist quotes. Friedrich Nietzsche, God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him, yet his shadow still looms. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? Albert Camus. The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Nihilism's impact. Nihilism has had a significant impact on modern philosophy, literature, and art. It forces a confrontation with the uncomfortable reality that life may lack inherent meaning, pushing individuals to reconsider their assumptions about morality, purpose, and existence. Nihilism has influenced existentialist thought, postmodernism, and even popular culture. Critics of nihilism argue that it can lead to cynicism, apathy, or moral relativism. However, thinkers like Nietzsche and Camus saw nihilism as a challenge to overcome, urging individuals to create their own meaning and embrace life's possibilities in the face of uncertainty. By grappling with nihilism, you can gain a deeper understanding of your own beliefs and motivations, finding strength and purpose in the freedom to define your own existence. Absurdism. Embracing the conflict between life's meaninglessness and the human search for meaning. Core idea. Absurdism asserts that human beings exist in a purposeless, chaotic universe and that our natural desire for meaning is at odds with the indifferent nature of the universe. This conflict, known as the absurd, cannot be reconciled, but we must face it with courage and create meaning through our actions. Key figure. Albert Camus, 1913 to 1960, French-Algerian philosopher, writer, and journalist, who is best known for his work on absurdism. Camus is often associated with existentialism, though he distinguished his ideas by focusing on the absurd rather than existential freedom. Core tenets of absurdism. The absurd. What it means. Absurdism revolves around the idea of the absurd, the conflict between humanity's intrinsic desire to find meaning in life and the universe's lack of any inherent meaning or purpose. This fundamental tension is unavoidable and defines the human condition. Philosophical insight. Camus argued that while this conflict is frustrating and unsettling, it cannot be resolved by either denying the absurd through belief in a higher power or some ultimate purpose, or giving up on life. Instead, we must face the absurd with full awareness and without illusion. Revolt against the absurd. What it means. According to Camus, the appropriate response to the absurd is not to surrender to despair, nihilism, or suicide, but to revolt against it. This revolt involves embracing life passionately, despite its lack of inherent meaning, and refusing to be paralyzed by the absurd. Philosophical insight. By accepting the absurd and continuing to live with full awareness of it, you assert your freedom and defy the universe's indifference. This revolt is an act of defiance and personal empowerment in the face of absurdity. The myth of Sisyphus. What it means. In his famous essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus uses the Greek myth of Sisyphus as a metaphor for the human condition. Sisyphus is condemned by the gods to roll a boulder up a hill, only for it to roll back down each time he reaches the top. Despite the futility of his task, Camus suggests that we must imagine Sisyphus happy, finding purpose in the struggle itself rather than in the outcome. Philosophical insight. The myth illustrates how humans can find meaning in the act of living, even when faced with a universe that offers no ultimate answers or rewards. Life's meaning is found not in achieving a final goal, but in the continuous effort and rebellion against futility. Living without appeal. What it means. Camus advocates for living without appeal, meaning that we should not rely on external sources, such as religion, ideology, or even reason, to give life meaning. Instead, we must embrace the uncertainty and ambiguity of existence and live fully in the present moment. Philosophical insight. Living without appeal involves accepting that life's meaning is not handed to us, but is something we must actively create for ourselves, moment by moment. This requires rejecting illusions and confronting life with honesty and courage. The absurd hero. What it means. Camus describes the absurd hero as someone who recognizes the absurdity of life but continues to live with passion and intensity. The absurd hero accepts the lack of inherent meaning but refuses to be defeated by it. Philosophical insight. The absurd hero represents a way of living that acknowledges life's inherent contradictions but refuses to retreat into despair or false hope. Instead, the absurd hero finds freedom in the act of creating their own meaning through actions, relationships, and creativity. Practical application of absurdism. Embrace the struggle. Like Sisyphus, embrace the struggle of life, not for the sake of achieving some ultimate goal, but for the experience of living itself. Find meaning in the journey rather than in the destination. Create personal meaning. In a world without inherent meaning, you are free to create your own purpose. This could be through relationships, art, work, or simply the act of living with intensity and awareness. Your personal meaning doesn't need to be justified by any external authority. Revolt against despair. Instead of succumbing to nihilism or despair, revolt against the absurd by choosing to live fully and passionately. Defy the universe's indifference with your actions and decisions. Live authentically. Since life has no predefined meaning, absurdism encourages you to live authentically without illusions. Confront life's challenges directly and make choices that reflect your true self, not societal expectations or imposed values. Famous absurdist quotes. Albert Camus. The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Albert Camus. There is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Judging whether life is or is not worth living amounts to answering the fundamental question of philosophy. Absurdism's impact. Absurdism has had a profound influence on modern philosophy, literature, and existential thought. It offers a way of living that embraces the inherent uncertainty and ambiguity of life, rather than seeking ultimate answers or retreating into despair. Camus' emphasis on rebellion against the absurd has resonated with individuals facing existential crises, providing a framework for finding meaning in a world that offers none. Absurdism challenges you to confront life's contradictions with courage, creativity, and resilience. By embracing the absurd, you can live more fully, accepting the chaos of the universe while finding joy and meaning in your own experiences and choices. Buddhism, the philosophy of enlightenment and the middle way. Core idea: Buddhism is both a philosophy and a spiritual practice centered on understanding the nature of suffering and achieving liberation from it. The goal is to attain enlightenment, nirvana, through ethical living, mindfulness, and wisdom. Key figure: Siddhartha Gautama, c. 563 to 483 BCE, known as the Buddha. Siddhartha Gautama was a spiritual teacher in ancient India. After attaining enlightenment, he spent his life teaching others the path to liberation from suffering. His teachings form the foundation of Buddhism. Core tenets of Buddhism: the Four Noble Truths. What it means: the Buddha's core teaching is summarized in the Four Noble Truths. The truth of suffering, dukkha life, is characterized by suffering, dissatisfaction, and impermanence. The truth of the cause of suffering, samadaya, the cause of suffering is attachment, craving, and desire, which arise from ignorance about the true nature of reality. The truth of the end of suffering, nirodha, it is possible to end suffering by letting go of attachment and achieving nirvana, a state of liberation from the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. The truth of the path to the end of suffering, magga, the way to end suffering is through the Noble Eightfold Path, a guide to ethical conduct, mental discipline, and wisdom. Philosophical insight: the Four Noble Truths offer a framework for understanding the human condition and provide a path to overcoming suffering. By acknowledging suffering and its causes, individuals can work toward liberation and inner peace. The Noble Eightfold Path. What it means: the Noble Eightfold Path is the Buddha's prescription for overcoming suffering and achieving enlightenment. It is divided into three categories: wisdom, prajna, right understanding, right intention; ethical conduct, sila, right speech, right action, right livelihood; mental discipline, samadhi, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. Philosophical insight: the Eightfold Path is a practical guide for living a life that leads to spiritual awakening. It emphasizes the importance of moral conduct, mindfulness, and the cultivation of wisdom in overcoming ignorance and attachment. The middle way. What it means: the middle way is a core principle in Buddhism that advocates for a balanced approach to life. It avoids the extremes of self-indulgence and self-mortification, emphasizing a path of moderation that leads to enlightenment. Philosophical insight: the middle way teaches that true happiness and spiritual growth come from avoiding extremes and finding balance in all aspects of life. This principle is reflected in the Buddha's life, where he rejected both extreme asceticism and luxurious living to find the path to enlightenment. Impermanence, anicca. What it means: Buddhism teaches that all things are impermanent and constantly changing. Nothing in the physical world, including our own experiences and emotions, is stable or permanent. Philosophical insight: recognizing the impermanence of all things helps to reduce attachment and suffering. By accepting the transient nature of life, one can cultivate a sense of detachment and inner peace. No self, anatta. What it means: the doctrine of anatta asserts that there is no permanent, unchanging self or soul. The self is an illusion, and what we consider to be I is merely a collection of physical and mental processes that are constantly changing. Philosophical insight: the concept of no self challenges the common belief in a fixed identity. By letting go of the illusion of a permanent self, one can reduce attachment, ego-driven desires, and ultimately, suffering. Karma and rebirth. What it means: karma refers to the law of cause and effect. Our actions, whether good or bad, create consequences that affect our future experiences. Rebirth is the continuation of the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, samsara, which is driven by karma and ends only when one attains nirvana. Philosophical insight: understanding karma encourages ethical behavior and mindfulness, as every action has consequences. Rebirth emphasizes the importance of breaking free from the cycle of suffering by achieving enlightenment. Mindfulness, sati. What it means: mindfulness is the practice of being fully present and aware of one's thoughts, feelings, and actions in the present moment, without judgment. It is a key aspect of mental discipline on the Eightfold Path. Philosophical insight: mindfulness allows individuals to observe their experiences without becoming attached to them, fostering greater clarity, inner peace, and wisdom. It is essential for overcoming ignorance and achieving spiritual insight. Practical application of Buddhism. Practice mindfulness. Incorporate mindfulness into your daily life by paying attention to your thoughts, emotions, and actions. This awareness helps reduce suffering by breaking the cycle of automatic reactions and attachments. Cultivate compassion and ethical living. Follow the ethical guidelines of the Eightfold Path by practicing right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Cultivate compassion for all beings, recognizing that we are all interconnected. Embrace impermanence. Accept the impermanence of life and let go of attachment to material possessions, status, and even your own identity. This acceptance can lead to greater inner peace and resilience in the face of change. Seek balance. Apply the middle way in your life by avoiding extremes and finding balance in your habits, relationships, and pursuits. This approach fosters harmony and well-being. Famous Buddhist quotes. Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. The mind is everything. What we think, we become. Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. Buddhism's impact. Buddhism has had a profound influence on millions of people across the world, shaping both Eastern and Western thought. Its teachings on mindfulness, compassion, and the nature of suffering have been integrated into modern psychology, particularly in mindfulness-based therapies. The philosophy of Buddhism offers practical tools for living a more peaceful, compassionate, and enlightened life. Critics of Buddhism might argue that its emphasis on detachment could lead to disengagement from the world. However, the Buddha's teachings encourage active compassion and ethical living as essential aspects of the path to enlightenment. By embracing the wisdom of Buddhism, you can cultivate inner peace, reduce suffering, and live a life of greater mindfulness and compassion, ultimately moving toward enlightenment and liberation from the cycle of suffering. Confucianism. The philosophy of moral order, virtue, and social harmony. Core idea. Confucianism is a philosophical and ethical system founded by Confucius that emphasizes the importance of moral virtues, social harmony, and the cultivation of good character. It focuses on the proper conduct of individuals within their relationships and society, stressing the significance of family, respect for elders, and the role of education in moral development. Key figure. Confucius, Kongfuzi, 551 to 479 BCE, a Chinese philosopher. Confucius sought to restore moral order during a time of social chaos. His teachings, compiled in the Analects, emphasized the cultivation of virtue, proper conduct, and the importance of social roles in maintaining harmony. Core tenets of Confucianism. Run, benevolence, humanity. What it means. Run is the central virtue in Confucianism, often translated as benevolence or humanity. It refers to the moral disposition to do good and to care for others, embodying kindness, empathy, and compassion. Philosophical insight. Run is the guiding principle behind all ethical actions in Confucianism. It emphasizes the importance of treating others with respect and compassion, fostering harmonious relationships in all areas of life. Li, ritual, propriety. What it means. Li refers to ritual, propriety, and etiquette, behaviors that maintain social harmony and order. This includes both formal rituals and everyday manners that demonstrate respect for others and uphold the values of society. Philosophical insight. By practicing Li, individuals cultivate self-discipline and respect for social norms, which contribute to the stability and harmony of society. Rituals and proper conduct help to express and reinforce the underlying moral principles of Ren. Shao, filial piety. What it means. Shao is the virtue of filial piety, or respect for one's parents and ancestors. In Confucianism, family relationships are the foundation of society, and honoring one's parents is seen as the first step toward cultivating virtue. Philosophical insight. Shao extends beyond mere obedience to parents. It involves a deep sense of responsibility and care for one's family, reflecting a broader commitment to social harmony and respect for tradition. Confucius believed that strong family bonds lead to a more stable and ethical society. Righteousness. What it means. Is the virtue of righteousness or moral uprightness, referring to the ability to do what is morally right and just, even in difficult circumstances. It involves acting according to ethical principles rather than for personal gain. Philosophical insight. He emphasizes moral integrity and the importance of doing the right thing, regardless of external pressures or consequences. It reflects a commitment to justice and fairness, central to the Confucian vision of a virtuous society. Wisdom. What it means. Is the virtue of wisdom, involving the ability to make good judgments and decisions based on ethical knowledge. It includes practical wisdom, which helps individuals navigate complex social situations with moral clarity. Philosophical insight. Wisdom in Confucianism is not just intellectual knowledge, but the application of ethical understanding to real-life situations. It enables individuals to act in accordance with Ren and Yi, guiding them toward virtuous conduct. Junzi, the superior person. What it means. Confucius frequently referred to the ideal of the Junzi, or superior person, an individual who embodies the virtues of Ren, Yi, Li, and Ji. The Junzi is morally cultivated, practices self-restraint, and acts with integrity in all aspects of life. Philosophical insight. The concept of the Junzi represents the Confucian ideal of moral excellence and leadership. Confucius believed that by cultivating these virtues, individuals could become morally superior and serve as role models for others, contributing to a harmonious and just society. The importance of education. What it means. Confucius emphasized the transformative power of education in cultivating virtue and moral character. He believed that education should focus not only on intellectual knowledge, but also on moral development and self-cultivation. Philosophical insight. Education is seen as a lifelong process that shapes individuals into virtuous members of society. Confucius advocated for the study of classical texts, philosophy, and ethics as essential to personal growth and the betterment of society. Social harmony. What it means. Confucianism places a strong emphasis on social harmony, which is achieved through the proper functioning of social roles and relationships. Each person has a role to play within the family, community, and state, and fulfilling these roles with virtue ensures the stability and prosperity of society. Philosophical insight. Confucianism promotes the idea that a well-ordered society is built on a foundation of virtuous individuals who act in accordance with their roles and responsibilities. Social harmony is maintained through respect, cooperation, and adherence to ethical principles. Practical application of Confucianism. Cultivate virtue. Practice the virtues of Ren, benevolence, Yi, righteousness, and Ji, wisdom, in your daily life. Strive to act with kindness, integrity, and moral clarity in all situations. Honor relationships. Pay attention to your relationships, especially within your family. Show respect for your parents, elders, and ancestors, and fulfill your responsibilities to others in your community. Practice rituals and etiquette. Embrace the importance of rituals, whether formal or informal, to express respect for others and uphold social harmony. Proper conduct and manners are not just superficial. They are essential to cultivating a virtuous character. Value education. Commit to lifelong learning and self-cultivation. Seek out knowledge that helps you grow morally and intellectually, and apply what you learn to improve both yourself and your community. Famous Confucian quotes. Confucius. The superior man is modest in his speech, but exceeds in his actions. Confucius. Do not impose on others what you yourself do not desire. Confucianism's impact. Confucianism has profoundly influenced Chinese culture, East Asian societies, and beyond. Its teachings on virtue, family, social roles, and governance have shaped political systems, educational practices, and social norms for centuries. Confucian principles continue to inform contemporary discussions on ethics, leadership, and social responsibility. Critics of Confucianism argue that its emphasis on hierarchy and social roles may reinforce rigid structures and inhibit individual freedom. However, Confucians see the cultivation of virtue and respect for social relationships as essential to personal and societal well-being. By embracing Confucian principles, you can work toward becoming a more virtuous, responsible, and harmonious individual, contributing to the well-being of both your family and society at large. These philosophical ideas offer diverse perspectives on how to live a meaningful and fulfilling life. Whether you seek inner peace, ethical guidance, or personal freedom, These philosophies provide tools for deeper reflection and personal growth.